Hello, good afternoon, everyone who has just joined. And you remember my second session, which was almost fortnight back, where we discussed the basic strategic planning model. And in my last session, I had discussed the vision, mission, and the objectives, if you remember. And this was one which we did, and we discussed that it's very important to have a very clear vision and mission, and what are the objectives. But today we are going to discuss the second part, which is part of the strategy. If you remember the three questions of this strategy, the first question was, where do we want to go? And the second question was, where we are today, what is the total external environment, and what is the internal environment. So in today's session, we are going to discuss the external environment. And external environment is something which is outside the organization. Whatever is outside the organization is really the external environment. So we are really, and external environment, as you very clearly see, that it keeps changing. It keeps changing, and that too it keeps changing at a rapid pace. And that's where we should be able to, and it impacts our business. It impacts our business both in a positive manner and in the negative side also. So it's very important that we are quite aware of what is the external environment and what are the changes that's taking place, because they are going to impact our business. So we should be able to know how the impact is going to be done, and how we can protect ourselves from the impact of the external environment, as well as maybe take advantage of it in case it offers certain opportunities. But external environment is a very large external environment, in the sense there are huge number of factors in the external environment. And these factors, if we, these factors are, what happened is videos, hello? So there are large number of factors in the external environment. For example, today, external environment is fraught with the corona, and it is impacting all businesses. It's impacting various businesses, in fact, and some of them are really having a downturn. And similarly, if you see in the recent past, we had demonetization, we had GST, and all these things are the factors in the external environment which affect the our profitability, business profitability. So in order to really understand the total external environment and its impact on our business, we would like to categorize into three layers. So if you see the organization is there. It is external environment consists of three layers. The outermost layer is the macro environment, which is a general environment, and we'll discuss that what is the macro environment. And middle one is the industry environment, and the innermost are the competitors who are there in the markets where we are operating. So all the three, and we'll discuss each one of them and what are the impacts which they can make, and and how we are able to adapt to these changes in the external environment. So let me ask a very simple question. Out of these three layers, which consist of macro environment, a very large kind of environment, which I mentioned as something in the political or in the environmental, in global warming and all that. Industry is something which we are operating in. We are part of a particular industry, and in that industry there will be other players who are offering the same products or services which we are doing. And the innermost is the competitor, direct competitors. Which of these layers has the maximum impact on the organization? Can we see that? Can you make a guess out there? Yeah. Anybody want to make a guess which of these layers impact the business, impact the organization most?
Sir, it is competitors
Yes,
and
sir. It's
markets.
It could be
competitors.
industry, sir. It could
Yeah,
be industry.
You're absolutely right. See, the one which is closest to the organization has the maximum influence on the organization. So macro environment, which is the outermost, has an impact, but not as much as the competitors, for example, direct competitors. So if you are, let's say, in a telecom service, and if you are Airtel, then Geo or Vodafone and all that will impact the Airtel business most compared to, let's say, global warming or whatever, is so this the one which is closest to the organization that impacts the organization most. So let's macro environment has got the let us a number of factors. So again, we will like to sort of what happened. I'm not able to change my slide. Uh, this is the outermost uh, macro environment, and it has got 6 sub environments, and that is easy to really understand the total macro environment by looking at each of these 6 sub environments. So there are 6 ones are the number one political, for example, political, economic, social, and environmental, legal, technological. So there are 6 of them, and let's go one by one to each one of them to understand each sub environment. So let's look at the political one first. Now, political environment is primarily the kind of stability in the country which we have, political stability or instability, the kind of political ideologies which we have in the country, and that has an impact on the business. For example, today we are talking about Atmanirbharta, and that is going to have some impact on the various businesses. We had a few months back, we talked about make in India kind of this thing. So depending on what is the political ideology, because number of changes take place in the business world because of the kind of political leadership which they are talking, and a lot of corruption level which is there, and which really impacts our this thing. And government keeps on coming with different policies with respect to the way we do business in the country, and all these policies, they impact on the business. So political and environment is is something which has a fairly good amount of influence on this thing. Let's move on to the economic segment. Is a very powerful segment for the business because it affects almost all the businesses, because the it really means that the the national economy of the place where our business is operating. Suppose we are operating in India, so it's the Indian economy which is going to impact us. If we are also having our business in, let's say, Europe, then, or let's say in France, then France economy is going to be also relevant to our study here. But let's say in the GDP growth rate, inflation rate, all these economic parameters, interest rate, exchange rate, and budget deficit, and all these factors, they impact our business. For example, in case the interest rates are very high, it's going to impact on the automobile sector or in the reality sector, because home loans are going to be more expensive and so on. So it's going to impact the business. And if you notice that all these factors, inflation rate, interest rate, and growth rate of economy, all these impact the purchasing power of the consumers. So depending on your consumers, the one which you are catering to, your business is catering to, and these consumers' purchasing power is going to be impacted. If that's going to be impacted, then your business is also likely to get impacted. So that is where I think the impact, all these factors impact the purchasing power of consumers, and hence your business. Let's look at the third one, which is socio-cultural, and it is primarily the changes in the demography, changes in the lifestyle of people, the attitude. Like supposing you find that the people are becoming very health conscious, or if they are preferring the healthier lifestyle, which is today's uh, is a change which is we are seeing it, and then number of businesses will get impacted by that. So you see that if the people become very highly health conscious, you see in the past, Coca-Cola came out with a Coke Diet, for example, and similarly, so number of even women in workplace, workforce diversity, all these changes that take place in the social environment has an impact. For example, today, work from home is the becoming the new norm for the working, and this is going to impact number of businesses, and so that is where the social cultural. If you come to the next one, which is a technological. Technological is something which all of us are very aware of, because technological changes make number of products obsolete, and number of new products and services also come. And if you remember, in in the last couple of years, we had Uber, Ola, and all that, and this is basically this service came about because of the mobile technological applications, and created and changed the business, particularly of the taxi services, which are traditional taxi services, became much more impacted on this thing. So new product innovation, and all the time the technological changes bring a lot of new products, new services, which are going to impact the businesses very much. Okay, let's go to the environmental. Environmental is primarily about the ecological. It is something which is global warming and pollution and air and water, all this pollution, and it also impacts the kind of sustainability which is now in the recent past. This is getting more and more importance, and it talks about that our material availability is getting more and more scarce. Number of materials are uh, materials. There are renewable and non-renewable material sources, and the non-renewable are getting depleted very fast, and that's going to change number of things. So it might have a lot of impact on our business. Issue of sustainability is definitely, as people are becoming more and more aware, the businesses will have to be um, taking this into consideration, that they are doing the business in a sustainable manner. So this is again going to be fairly important aspect. And finally, if you look at legal, legal is this is based on the laws and regulations. So this particular segment overlaps with the political, and here the government keeps on introducing number of laws which they keep on changing as well, and they all impact the businesses. For example, taxation laws, employment laws, which are the new reforms which are coming, for example, and even the patent laws, foreign trade regulations, all these taxable, all these legal uh, matters, they impact the business very much. So uh, now for each organization, therefore, uh, this we all these six terms, we have an acronym called PESTEL, PESTEL, and that is something which we need to study, because these factors are going to impact on the our industry and in turn to our organization. Now, uh, it's not necessary to keep on scanning all the changes and monitoring all the changes of all the six sub environments. Each business is uh, some of the environments are relevant to each business. some of them are not very important, not very critical. For example, for a banking sector, maybe the changes in the climate changes may not be all that relevant. So what, as a business, what you have to study is what are the important segments of this general environment which are very relevant and crucial for you. And now it's important that you keep on scanning the changes, because each change is going to impact your business. So that is the outermost this thing. Normally, businesses will not be able to control these changes normally, because unless you have a very significant leadership position in your industry, you may be able to maybe influence some of the laws and all that. But otherwise, all these changes are out of your control. You are not able to control these. And therefore, one has to study, one has to be very aware of these changes, and also study the impact on your business, so that you can take the necessary measures to reduce the impact of these changes. Okay, so let's next go to the middle layer, which is the industry sector. And this industry, as you know, each business is part of the industry, and in the industry there are number of number of players are providing the similar or the same products or services. So industry is a is a is a second layer. Now, all these factors, they, as I mentioned, that they impact the industry environment. In the industry, each company, for example, is concerned about the consumers, right? So, because consumers are the ones which buy your product or services, and you must understand the consumer in order to, and if you can create value for the customer, then they will be able to generate profit for you. So, customer is a very important player in the industry environment. Second is that for creating value for the customers, you must acquire certain goods and services which you can convert into something which is useful to the customers. So and those are the suppliers from where you acquire some goods and services. So the second most important player in the industry environments are the suppliers. Third most important, and in fact, competitors are the ones who are you are able to generate profit only if you're able to beat your competitors. So competitors are always there to give a fight to you, and they fight for the customer share or the market share and all that. So these customers. So in the industry environment, three players which are very crucial for us to understand and also know what is their behavior are the ones which are customers, suppliers, and competitors. So now let me ask a question at this point of time. And the question is that there are various industries in the business world. Are some industries more profitable than others? What is your answer? Or all industries are equally profitable? Yeah.
No,
Yes,
it
sir.
depends, sir.
Huh?
All can be a different, depends on the their business model and the product portfolio.
Yeah.
Depend on the
So now, supposing now if you have to rank the following industries, I just picked up 4: telecom, software, pharma, and airlines. Which one of these is the most profitable industry, and which is the least? So if you want to rank them, how would you rank?
So
software
1,
can
2,
be the
3, 4.
No, tell me the most profitable out of these.
software.
Drug and pharma, sir.
Pharma, okay, and the least profitable.
Airlines.
Airlines.
Airlines. Yeah. So and telecom, software is also profitable.
Software, sir. Number one
Software is the most profitable.
Software is the most, and the drug, pharma, and then next comes the telecom. Now, this is a chart which gives all the four.
Software, sir,
So you see,
software will be the first one, because in software you have a recurring business and as well as dependency business.
yeah,
So once you imply a software, you are more dependent on the your vendor for till the software life, till you replace the software.
yeah,
So that is where the highest margins are, because
so
dependency is higher,
yes, so software
and airline
industry
is
is
the last one.
and drug also, pharma is also pretty profitable. But what is telecom, which has been quite profitable in the past because of a lot of competition and all that, it has come down really. But the one which is airlines, which is the blue line in this, uh, lighter blue, and this is something which is the least profitable. So uh, these these are the, that means industries. Now, if you have to start a business today, you have to choose out of, supposing you have to choose out of four, naturally you'll go for the software, or maybe depending on your strengths and all that and all. So this is where the way back in 1979, there was a person called there is a person, Michael Porter, who is a professor in Harvard. He's an economist and professor of strategy in Harvard. He studied in 1979, that's almost 40 years ago, that different industries' profitability is different. And then he started studying what is it in the competitive structure of each industry that reflects on its profitability. So he started looking at the sources or the root cause of profitability, and he found out that the competitive forces in the industry, and there is a relationship between competitive forces and the profit potential. So if the competitive forces are very strong, then the profit potential will be low. And in case the competitive forces are weak, then the profit potential is going to be high. So he studied all the competitive forces, which he did a lot of research on this, and he um, finally determined there are 5 competitive forces. Yeah, any question at
Yes,
this point?
sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
In your last slide, you have basically tried to rank the different sectors basis their profitability.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
the more
yeah,
profitable sector and then followed by other ones.
yeah, yeah.
Is it also not time and demand dependent? Because at one point of time, some sector can be very demanding, and that's the reason it is very profitable. But let's take an example of like airlines. Airlines was at one point of time very demanding and hence profitable. But during this crisis period, airlines have to shut down, and then they have started losing. So it is also, I mean, when we actually come up with a general perspective of saying that this is more profitable, we should actually also mention at the same time that it is time dependent. So in case if you are saying software is more profitable,
This exactly what you're saying is right. This exactly was studied by Michael Porter, and he came out with the answer to this: why some industries are more profitable than the others. And if you just wait for a few more slides when we are discussing this, the things become, what you're saying is very clear.
okay, sir.
It become. Hello, hello. I'm sorry, I'm busy. Hello, hello. Yeah. So I was just answering.
Hello.
I was just answering your question. Can you hear me? Can all you?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Please
sir.
go ahead.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah. So what the gentleman just who asked me question was asking, and in fact, Michael Porter studied this aspect only. What are the factors which are impacting the profitability in an industry? And this is where he found out there are five forces competitive forces which work in the industry, and they impact the profitability of the industry. So like if the demand is very high, there'll be more and more players who will come into the market, into the sector, and they will start competing with each other, so much so that the profitability goes down. So that's where I think, so what you're saying is right. Airlines once upon a time was very profitable, but a number of companies came into this thing and created this thing. And it's not just the competition, but number of other factors which impact the profitability of the in the industry. So he identified 5 forces. So let's look at each one of them. The number 1 was rivalry among the existing firms. That means the intensity of the competition in the among the players who are providing the service or giving the product. So that is the number 1. Number 2 was if there are rivalry, if there are currently number of existing firms, but in case there are potential entrants, the more firms are likely to enter the market, then the profitability may go further down. So he said that the second force is potential entrants, and that's what probably you were referring to. Initially, in the airline business, there were only few major players, but then number of entrants came, and that the industry started becoming less and less profitable. Third is um, substitutes. It is not the products or services which you are providing today, which is giving competition, but there could be number of other substitutes which might provide competition. Substitutes means something which is not identical to the products which you are giving, which you are providing, but they come from different industry, but meet uh, they fulfill the same need which your product or service is there. So they are substitutes. They are not from your industry. They are not from your competitors, which are there, but they are coming from outside the industry. And that can also be a threat of this thing. Fourth,
Sir, can there be an example to support this?
I will go to all these. Like
Okay,
for example,
okay.
in substitute, for example, just to give you, if airlines has got air travel.
Sir, your audio is not
service,
clear. Sir, your audio is not coming.
audio is not coming. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but it is very low. Low voice. Very low voice.
Now, supposing airlines is a service which is there, then substitute could be very fast trains. So this is not from the same industry, but this ultimately it can serve the same need of transportation. So this is an example of, but we'll discuss this in detail a little later. But I just wanted to first give you idea of the 5 forces. The next force is the bargaining power of supplier. Now, see, if the suppliers have a lot of bargaining power, they can increase the price of the inputs which they are providing to you, and that will impact your this thing. Or they can probably change the quality of the material which they're supplying to you, and that will impact your business ultimately. So that is again the bargaining power. Similarly, there is fifth force is buyer's power, bargaining power of buyer. If the buyers are very demanding and they keep on demanding the lower price and all that, it's going to impact your business. Or if they keep on demanding better quality and higher quality, and which will probably increase your cost and impact your profit. So these are the 5 forces which he studied in detail. But let's look at, because this is very important, and it will make the entire business strategy aspects very clear. So let's go into details of each one of them. The first one, let's talk about the rivalry among the existing firms. Now, this is usually it is the most powerful force. strongest of the force, because we are really in a competitive world which is equivalent to a war zone, because people, I mean, they say that business world is a really a is a place to fight with each other and all that, and each competitor is looking for uh, killing the other one and all that. So there is a lot of competitive rivalry, which involves a lot of actions by each player. And if each player is very offensive in his actions, the counter move will be defense. So it is dishum among the various players. So it really depends on what is the intensity of rivalry, and intensity, it depends on what are the weapons our competitors are using to have an offensive action or a defensive action. So it depends on that. So let's what are the typical weapons for competing? Now you're all aware of this, but I'm trying to make you look from a different perspective. So now you're doing a business and you are having number of weapons in your uh, this thing and bag. And so first weapon, for example, if people competitors do is lower prices. The moment they lower prices, they get the higher market share. People, all the consumers move towards that. So that is one, and you have to counter that again for with the counter down. There could be some competitor might bring different features, or they might bring number of stylish models and all that. They can improve the product performance considerably higher, or a very high quality this thing, and that will again take the market share from your pocket to them. They might advertise and they might improve their brand image. This is again a weapon to have the to collect a lot of market share. They may have a bigger or better dealer network, and if they have a better dealer network, they people may like to switch over to the this thing. The lower interest rate financing, higher level of advertising. By advertising, you change the perception of the customers, and maybe make your product look much better than your competitors. You might have a stronger product innovation capabilities, better customer service. This number of companies, they are known for better customer service, and that's why they. So there are so many things which the competitors are able to do, and we need to probably have a counter action against this. So this rivalry among the various players becomes stronger if the market growth is slow. If the market growth is slow, then rivalry becomes very, very strong, because each player tries to have a higher or bigger share of the pie. So if the pie is not becoming bigger, but you want a bigger slice, then the competition becomes very high. Or if the rivals are of equal size, if some of the rivals are very, very small, then the rivalry is not very strong. But if the rivals are of equal size, then it becomes much, much more. If the buyer can switch the brand, if the cost of switching the brand is very low, if buyer finds it very easy to switch to the other company, other player, then it is rivalry becomes very strong. Similarly, if uh, if the other rivals are able to acquire a smaller firms and they become bigger rival, naturally the rivalry becomes very strong and all. So there are a number of such reasons. The idea is that if the market is not growing very much, then the competition intensity of the competition is going to be much higher. And if the rivalry becomes weaker, if the I mean, it's the other way around. It's the flip side of all the points which I mentioned earlier, is that if the there's a rapid market growth is increasing very rapidly, then the rivalry intensity of competition becomes low. If the switching cost of brands is very high, then rivalry becomes weaker, and so on. And these are the reasons by which you can understand the intensity of the competition. And all these factors, once you understand this, they become useful for developing your strategy, business strategy. So let's go to the second force, which is a potential entrance, set of potential entrants. Set of potential entrants is because each entrant, each potential entrant brings a lot of additional capacity. And if it is bringing additional capacity, that means he is going to have some market share, and that market share might come from your market share. So that means it is increasing the competition. So we have this threat is also very, very serious, and its seriousness depends on how many people are likely to come to the market, are the potential entrants, or what is the size of members of the potential entrants. Like for example, even Airtel was running a very good business. The Geo wanted to enter the market, and the Geo is a big size and potential powerful entrant, and it gave a run to the Airtel, for example. So it became a very so if you are having a threat from the potential entrants, you have to create some barriers to the entry of the potential entrants. And there are a number of barriers. For example, if the incumbents, the members, incumbents have certain patents or licenses, then the entrants may not be able to enter your market because they do not have the patents, unless because patents is the legal right of yours, so nobody can enter. Or if you have a huge, strong brand, if your brand is very powerful, potential entrants may not be able to enter because they will probably think twice before entering because you are having a strong position in your market. Or let's say if you are attain the economies of scale, if your production capacity is very big and you are able to reduce the cost by higher level of production, higher level of service, so you have got the benefit of the scale of large economies of scale. In that case, the new entrants who probably will not be able to start with that much high capacity, so he will not be able to provide the services at your cost. So that is again an entrant. Another barriers is the high sunk cost. In case it requires a huge capital expenditure for any entrant to enter the business, then they will think twice about it, because if the high sunk cost means the cost which is not recoverable in case you close down the business, if the cost is not recoverable, and that means you require a huge capital which is going to be at risk, so people may not be able to enter. In the switching cost of products, like supposing the current consumers are using your products and services, and if they have to switch over to the new entrants products and services and they incur high switching costs, then again the entrants will face a lot of barrier, and that's another reason. Or let's say if your capacity is very high, which I mentioned earlier, that is the capacity of the incumbents is very high and they are gaining a lot of economies of scale, they will not be able to get this thing. In case your industry's growth potential or profit potential is very high, you are likely to get a lot of potential entrants. So seriousness depends on the higher the attractiveness of the industry, more and more entrants are likely to be there. So you have to immediately build a lot of entry to this thing. And number of times the incumbents, they retaliate very badly in case they find that some of the incumbents are coming, they retaliate and stop the entrance of the new competitors. So that is a potential entrance threat to this thing. Coming to the suppliers, bargaining power of suppliers, as I mentioned that this is that suppliers really exert a lot of power by increasing the prices. The inputs which you are getting from the suppliers, and if they increase the prices or reduce the quality, then it is going to impact your business. So bargaining power of the supplier is very strong in case there are only a few suppliers. If you have to buy from only few suppliers, then you depend on them, and then when you depend on them, then they might increase the prices. So that is something which is there. If there are a large number of suppliers, then bargaining power of supplier is low, because if you want to increase the price, your buyer will immediately switch over to the next supplier and all that. If the needed inputs are in short supply, then again bargaining power of supplier is very high. If cost of switching to alternative supplier is high, then again, supposing you are buying the supplier is providing to you some differentiated input. That means the input which is not available with other suppliers, then he has got a very strong power. He might be able to dictate his price and all that, because nobody else is able to provide that kind of product. So, or if there are few substitutes available, then again, so for supplier, if you are not very important buyer, then he might not be able to, he will have a lot of power to this thing. Some number of times suppliers can also start the same business which you are doing. So they integrate forward. That means they might not be able to supply you, because they said, okay, we can also provide the same business, the same services or product which you are supplying. Okay, and similarly, buyers' power, and as I mentioned, that buyers also exert a lot of power by demanding low prices or better quality of products. If they demand lower prices, your profit potential goes down. Or let's say if they demand much better quality, that means to provide better quality, you will have to increase your cost, and therefore your profitability goes down. So bargaining power of buyers is strong. If there are only few buyers are there, then in that case, they will dictate terms. They will say, okay, you provide this one, but there are only a few you don't, and you are producing certain items, only few buyers are there. So they have a lot of power, this thing. Or if the buyers are large, as you know, Walmart buys from various companies huge quantity. Walmart buys a huge quantity. That means they are able to uh, demand a lot of concession. They lower the price of the uh, uh, products and all that. So if the buyers are large, they are able to lift a lot of products from your warehouse. Then they demand concessions. So large volume purchasers are important. If buyers can switch to different brands, or if they can switch to different substitutes, then again they have a stronger power. If identity of buyer adds prestige to seller's list of customers, again this is an example of Walmart. Walmart is a huge customer, and all the big companies, white goods companies and all that, TVs and all that, everybody wants to add Walmart in the buyer's list, and that's where they can. A buyer has got a lot of power. If the quantity and quality of information is available to the buyers very much, they are much more aware of what's available and what is the price level in the market and all that. They determine power. Like for example, today, if when you buy any stuff, you go to the Google, you go to the this thing, and you find out who are the various suppliers and what is the price and what are the reviews and all that. So once you are equipped with so much of information about the purchases, then you become powerful. You can go to the best supplier and all that. So that means you buyers have the ability to postpone purchases. Then you have a power. Okay, so these are the number of factors which are there for the buyers. Finally, substitutes. Substitutes, as I mentioned, substitutes are the goods which are not identical to the product or services which you are providing, but they fulfill the same need which your products and services are there. So let me give you a certain example. For example, overnight delivery, fax machines, the postal parcel service which is there. Now the substitute comes from the fax machine or email. Now you don't have to send the documents by post. There is substitute which is available, which is coming from different industry, uh, which is fax machine or mail, and uh, this is a this can impact the business of the parcel service. I'll take a pause for a minute because there is some noise coming, and I'll switch off the. Yeah, let's go to the second example. For example, sugar and NutraSweet, which is different. Glass, we have a glass items, but then substitute came from a plastic or containers, glass containers. Coffee substitute is tea, which is a different this thing, or the uh, number of times you have other drinks, which is uh, or let's say paper bags, we have a plastic bags, newspaper, and today newspaper substitute, which is a good example, which is a TV or internet and all that. The newspaper business has considerably gone down since a lot of people prefer to find out to know the news from the TV or the internet, which is available. So there are number, and I mentioned to you, which is airlines, for example. Airlines, this thing is the substitute product is the fast trains or the fast cars and all that. And of course, depending on the distance which you want to travel and how much time you have got. So there are certain plus points, but again, this is so these substitutes also provide a lot of competitive force because they can really phase your products out of this thing. Like for example, landline phones have been app has been already substitute has been incoming, which is again from the electronics and internet. And okay, so this competition from substitute is strong when, of course, there are good number of substitutes available. That means you have to start looking at your business little differently, and particularly if the substitute price is lower, then you have a very strong competition from the substitute, and you may have to lower your price or provide some additional feature. And if the quality and performance substitute is better, and or if the people can switch easily without incurring too much of cost to a substitute, then you have a strong force. So these five forces which are there, one has to really analyze these forces, understand number one, what are the competitive forces which you can which are associated with your business, and what is the strength of each force. All these forces are not equally powerful for your business. Some of them are very powerful, some of them, and each of these forces interact with each other. So there is a complex this thing that, so you have to identify each of these five forces in terms of very strong, fierce, strong, moderate, normal, weak. You can have a 5-point scale, and if depending on which is a strong force that has a potential to impact your business adversely. If it's a weak force, that's good for you. If it's a very strong force, that's bad for you. So, and then out of all the five forces, determine the collective strength of how you're going to deal with this. Is the if all the forces are very weak, very weak means if potential entrants, the entry barriers are very high, no new entrants can come to your business, come to your sector, or if the suppliers and buyers have very weak positions, they do not have too much of bargaining power. If the threat from substitute product is also very low, if the competition among the existing players is moderate or weak, in that case, you have a high profit potential. That means the industry is highly attractive. It's highly profitable. It is, though I can tell you that all these five forces may not be weak. There may be some which are weak, some may be strong. So it is, I'm taking one extreme. Or if you take the other extreme, if the entry barriers are very low, anybody can enter the market and give you a competition. Or if the suppliers and buyers are having having strong positions, they have a strong bargaining power, and or let's say substitutes are plenty and there's a lot of threat on the substitutes, or if the rivalry is intense, then this will mean all the forces are very strong, and that is means there's low profit potential. Low profit potential means very unattractive industry. So as I said that this an attractiveness or unattractiveness industry is not same for each player. As you know, airline industry is a very low potential, low profit potential. It's an unattractive industry. However, there are some players in the airline industry who are still making profit. I mean, I'm not saying today because of the corona, I think all airlines are in a very bad shape. But before pre-corona stage, I think some of the airlines were making profit. For example, Indigo probably was making profit, and in the global scenario, Southwest Airlines and RAN and airline and all that, they were making profit because of certain. So attractiveness is relative. It is not absolute. It gives you a fairly good idea as to which industry is attractive, which is not very attractive. So what are the strategic implications? Now this study of this competitive forces, these five forces, is not only for to identify the attractiveness or unattractiveness of the industry. It also helps you to certain inputs for your strategy formulation. Now, for example, if supplier power is very high because you're finding that there are only a few suppliers and they dictate terms to you, and so supplier power is very high. So if that is the situation, you can probably standardize your parts in order to increase the number of vendors. And whenever you increase the number of vendors, the supplier power goes down. Or let's say if the price war is very much there, and you find that number of players in your competition are lowering the price, then you may think of product development in order to provide some better features, some features which can neutralize the price war. Maybe customers probably will like to prefer those features which you are now providing and all that. Similarly, if you want to scare off the new entrants, you might increase your brand loyalty by a number of ways and all that, and so people, the new entrants may not be so tempted to come over because your brand loyalty is very high. And similarly, if you want to limit the threat of substitutes, you might be able to do in your strategy something different so that accessibility is much higher. So your product is taken. For example, soft drinks, Coca-Cola and Pepsi and all that, they started vending machine once upon a time to improve the accessibility and ward of the limit of the substitutes. So that is where the industry sector is there. Now, this industry sector, as you see, while micro environment only influences or has an impact on the industry sector also has the impact on the organization. So as your 5 forces which are there, they all impact on this thing. However, as I mentioned just now, the organization can also have some strategy to impact the competitive force. If you want to weaken the competitive force, you can have certain strategy developed and implement in order to. So this is a two-way. Organization can impact the competitive forces like competitive forces can impact the organization. So that's where the strategy implications are there. So finally, as far as the industry sector is concerned, we are using this industry analysis of all the competitive force to understand the attractiveness or the whether to enter the market, or if the sector becomes, if the industry becomes very unattractive, then you would like to determine whether I should exit the market because if it's no longer attractive. Similarly, it can open up certain opportunities for profit. If you find some industry is very attractive, you may be able to start exploring certain opportunity in this. You can decide about the position. You can have number of strategies which you can determine because of this. So ultimately, there are a number of very important usage of industry analysis. Every company has to do it almost continuously. This thing. Okay, so now let's come to the third layer, which is a competitor. Competitor, it is the most powerful force. Competitor means, here I mean the competitor, the players who are operating in the same market as you are doing it. So they are your direct competitor, and they can really impact you very adversely if you're not aware, if you don't. So what each organization has to do is identify the competitors, and then you have to do some competitor analysis. That means each of these rivals, and you may identify which is a strong rival, which is not very strong. But each of the strong rivals, you will have to understand that which rival has the best strategy, which rival is likely to gain market share, and why he's going to gain market share. What is the rank of the industry leaders 5 years from now, how they are going to move up and down, and what is the any new rivals are likely to come or not. So all these things which are there, but the rivals who are there with you already, your existing competitors, you have to study their 4 elements of their, what is the strategy of your competitor, what are the objectives. Does he want to increase the market share, or he wants to increase the profitability of, he wants to increase the profit. Number of times the competitors' objective may not be profit making. It may be increase market share, particularly, for example, in the public sector. Public sector, the objective is welfare of people and increase market share. They may not, the objective of profitability may not be very high. So what are the objectives? If the objective of the rival is to have a huge profit, that means he is going to increase the market share. He is going to likely to probably bring out number of weapons to fight with you. And what are the assumptions? What are the beliefs? What is what are does he want to become the leader in the industry or not? What are the resources and capabilities they have? Because he's going to develop his strategy based on the resources and capabilities, and he's going to fight the competition based on his resources and capabilities. So, what are the resources and capabilities of the competitors? So, all these things are required to be assessed by you. You have to find out more and more about your competitors. And that is where we talk about the competitive intelligence. How do we know all these things from about the competitor? It's very difficult. No competitor will like to share these information readily with you. So it is something which you have to have, and that's why you have what you call some intelligence, competitors intelligence. There are different techniques to collect the information. For example, you can have number of information about the competitor from the journals of the various industry associations or business journals, and these journals sometimes talk a lot about each player in the industry, and from where you can get a lot of information about this. The competitors' annual reports and various advertisements can also give you number of times when you analyze the top management's their CEOs' addresses or media interviews, you start reading in between the lines to get an idea of what are these things. Sometimes by attending the trade fairs where the competitor is exhibiting his products, and you find out a little more about what they are likely to come out with the new ones and all that. So this is all another. There are large ways of a number of ways you can get. Of course, there are certain secrets about the competitor which you will never be able to get a hang on. But then each firm should use legal and ethical practices to gather intelligence, because there could be unethical ways of getting the secrets of the uh, competitive strategy, which is not at all recommended, because that can put you into trouble. But there are some very legal ways of getting the information, as much information as you can, because if you get this information, you will be able to make your strategy appropriately. So the degree to which an industry is attractive or not very attractive, as I mentioned, it is not the same for all industry participants. Now, all industry participants will not be able to find that this is unattractive industry. There are some which are really um, uh, the opportunities and industry presents depend on companies' ability to capture them. Like, what are the company's resources and capabilities? If you have a very strong resources and capabilities in your company, then even in an unattractive industry, you should be able to make a good profit. So, and if even in an attractive industry, even in, let's say, software or pharma industry, depending on your resources and capabilities, you may not be able to generate a lot of profit. So it really depends on what kind of resources and capabilities you have within the company. So you will be able to generate more and more profit or this thing. So ultimately, it also depends on your resources and capabilities. And that is the theme of our next session. We are going to look internally, internal environment of the business of the company, and see what resources and capabilities we have and how we can utilize them to in order to develop the strategy which to counter the competition. So this is that's where I close this today's session. But I have certain reading assignment. There are two very good articles for the next session. One is competing on resources, and the second one is the core competence of the corporation. and I'm sharing with you this thing. Maybe Arun or Alok will be able to provide these things to you, uh, these two uh, URLs, and you can probably download and this thing. Now we will like to take questions.
Sir?
Divya, yeah.
Yes, sir. So I would request you if you could little bit elaborate on the objective part, just 2 slides before you were closing, because ultimately
Yeah.
objective of every company would be profit. Like you were saying, some public sector.
Yeah. So objective of each company, but there are companies, and I have example of certain public sectors only. That public sector, the objective of the company is the topmost objective of the company is not profit making. They're supposed to make profit, all right, but there could be social welfare, it could be employee welfare. They objectives also to provide more and more employment to people and so on. So that is where I think the point is that in case, and if let's say if the company's company's objective is to have market share, increasing huge market share. In that case, they will do whatever. They might even not make enough profit, but they will have huge market share. So what they will do is they will lower the price to have more and more market share. And by lowering the price, their profit potential goes down. But then if the
So, but if the market share is more, it would ultimately lead to better profitability because they will be dominating the market.
No, they will be dominating the market, but then uh, if their price is very low, then the margin on the margin is very little. So their profit is not as high as
Compared
some
to
other
the
companies.
market share in that term, you would say?
Somebody with the lower market share and better price in the sense that if he has a not a, I mean, in my locality there are two shops. One shop is the idea is to have huge market share, and he lowers the price, lowers than the MRP also. The other one, he gives
Okay.
everything on MRP, so he doesn't. His total sale is lower. However, he is also making good money. So my
Okay.
idea is that depending on what your objective is, you can really do this thing. So it's a market. Higher
Maybe,
market
sir,
share.
can we give an example of a very luxury brand like Mercedes or BMW and compare that their market share? They may not be able to target every customer.
Yeah.
And on one hand, it could be Maruti, which can target almost a great section of people. Can
Yeah.
this be a reasonable answer
Now,
to support this?
if you compare number of automobile manufacturers, um, I mean, what I want to impress upon you is the market share is not directly proportional to the amount of
Profits.
Yeah, because
Okay.
you may have a high market share, but you're making less profit than a competitor who is having low market share but
Okay.
higher profit. So this
Okay.
is possible, and there could be number
This
of
is what you were trying to emphasize
yeah,
with the
yeah,
objective
yeah.
part.
So the
Okay,
person,
fine, sir.
the competitor who is looking for a huge market share, is most likely to drop the prices and give you problems. Yeah. Any other
Thank you, sir.
question?
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Hi.
Sir, in this context, how do you see Apple as a firm, sir? I mean, the way what you gave
Yeah,
idea.
Apple is a leading player, but what they're doing is their major weapon for competition is innovation, product development. So they are spending a huge amount in the part of the study. They're spending a huge amount on the innovation, product development, and that's where the leader is. And once they come out with the innovative product, before it gets copied by number of other players, they make huge profit. So you see, i10, i11, i12 mobile phones. The initially the prices were very, very high, very, very high. And as more and more competitors are able to copy all the features, they also keep on dropping their prices because they have to be competitive in the market. So Apple's major strategy is to lead in the product development or innovation domain and be leader in that. And so that's where they make more and more profit.
Sir, just offhand, I just want to,
Yeah.
it's been curious on this front.
Yeah.
How is it seeing as Xiaomi in this regard, sir? Because it's like flooded the market, made it
Yeah.
reachable. I mean, somewhere they would have felt the loss. Maybe
Yes.
the prices could have gone low or something. I mean, some
Yes.
lesson learned.
Yes, Xiaomi, what happens is they are, I mean, this has become much more clearer when we talk about the strategy in the next to next session. What happens is when people, uh, people copy the products, when they do imitation, they are those people who do imitation, they don't spend too much on the R&D side. So their cost is much lower. Then what they do is they mass produce number of items, and mass production in that mass production, they are able to reduce the cost because of the economies of scale. So this company is, number one, not spending too much money on the R&D side. They are mass producing the items. In mass production, they are able to lower the cost of the production. And that's where they're able to have much bigger, much better margin. And then they make, by lower prices, they are able to have the bigger market share. They keep on getting more and more customers. And that's what but in case there would be somebody else also who comes up with even lower cost products, because the people they also will get into some problem. So this is where the problem, this is where I was talking about the competitive world. In the business world, there's a huge war going on. Huh? Each competitor is trying to play between the lower price and some special unique features. And this is what we're going to talk about in the next to next session. How people make different strategies in order to compete with the other players.
Sir, in case of Apple, when this
In case of?
in case of Apple, when Steve Jobs he envisioned the
Yeah.
there were a lot of challenges and barriers from the competitors as well as the industry as whole. Because IBM was there, HP was there, and some other companies also. They were quite huge, and to come up with a product which is very expensive at the same time, because to come up as a new entrant with the price which is higher than their competitors with iPhone, iPad, and MacBook. I mean, how was it possible, even think about and envision a company to get to form, and compete in the market with those who already had the brand name, who already had all the barriers in place for, Apple, and still, Steve Jobs made up his mind, to come up with something. What was there, how
No,
this?
yeah. Steve Jobs, in fact, he was a visionary, and he could see a much higher level of iPhone or the phone service. So he was the person who was able to make the smartphone. Otherwise, the phone in the normal mobile business, we had Nokia's, we had Siemens, we had number of such phones which were there. But then he could see that smartphones means the phones which can have internet facility and which can do computation and all that. So he could see that, and he started developing product in that line. And that's where in fact, it was basically the Apple who came out initially with the smartphones using the mobile technology as well as computer technology, both in the same instrument. And that's where, so his major forte was identifying the customer need, something within the customers. I think all of us, we did not know that we can have a mobile in our hand which can do the computation, which can act as a computer. But he could see that. He could understand that the customer, if he has a computer also in that instrument, that will be great. application of computer. So this is where the innovation and product development, and Steve Jobs was superb in that, and that's why he brought that era of the smartphones. And then after he brought this, the number of people then start copying, and that's imitating or coming out with a similar kind of a product.
But
Very
as per your
nice.
definition, sir, will it become an unattractive industry? Because when we are differentiating between attractive industry and unattractive industry, you said that unattractive industries were those where, in spite of the barriers and entrants were easily able to come up and set up themselves. So if Steve Jobs was able to set up in spite of the challenges and barriers, does it make the this telecom-based all the gadgets industry an unattractive industry?
No, but Steve Jobs was a pioneer. No, there was hardly any competition. So for a pioneer, and we may discuss this item also somewhere in our course. The pioneer, the person who comes out with a new product, he doesn't have any competitor. So he has the entire field open to him. He is, in fact, in the initial stage, it's a monopoly. Anybody who comes to the new product is a monopoly, so he can charge any, and that's what a lot of pharma companies are making money. That as long as when they come out with a new formulation and get it patented, they have monopoly. I mean, like if corona vaccine comes and somebody patents it, and that company will probably have a monopoly and then dictate the price of that. So Steve Jobs in the beginning had that kind of benefit in this thing, because the barriers can be created by patenting the technology which you are coming out with, and that's where pharma companies do. They patent whatever new medicine which they come out with. They patent, and as long as the patent is valid, nobody can copy it, and that's where they make a lot of money.
So if you allow, I would like to add on this, sir.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, in fact, I just happened to see one of a very interesting video where the Steve Jobs were promoting about the iCloud. And you very well said, sir, he was a true visionary, because he actually created a differentiation in well begun. When have been like iPhone, everything is different. And now I could just happen to see the video, so where he was actually keeping his own benchmark and then degrading his further something he had brought in a mobile, that iCloud kind of similar thing, but mobile gets slowed down. So now when he was introducing the iCloud, he actually degraded that previous his own version. So he was actually now in a state where he's benchmarking his own records and breaking and further moving without iCloud. So this is, I actually saw in his video that how innovation and his own benchmarking is leading him forward, sir.
Yeah, the pioneer has to, for the pioneer, the challenger is himself. He challenges himself to come out with a new products, new services, new technology, and all that.
Sir.
So that's where and Steve Jobs was one of them.
One of them. Great, sir. Thanks.
Any other question, please?
Sir, it cannot be only for pioneer. I think anybody who is a leader in any industry, for them the biggest challenge is to enhance their own benchmarking.
Absolutely. So I mean, when I said pioneer, all leaders or this thing, they keep striving for a better standard than what they have achieved, and they keep climbing up. Climbing up means that if you have come to the peak, then you again scale the next peak, which is higher than that. So you set a your standards keep on going higher. The bar keeps on raising. You keep on raising the bar. You keep on challenging yourself. Yeah, that's a good point. Any other question before we close down this? Okay,
the
thank
only
you.
humble submission is thank you very much for a wonderful session once again, sir. Maybe slides, if I will just request the IT person behind, sir, humble submission if it can be urgently given there, so that we can reinforce in a very early pick again.
Yeah, okay. So I'm sure Alok and Arun will be.
Thank you, Alokji. Please, I request in advance.
Sure,
Sure, Ms. Ritu, I will take care of the same.
Right, sir.
In my last slide, you should be able to get these articles from the Google, from the internet, and read them before you come to the next session. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Alok, will you be able to pass on these two